Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about how to avoid buying into false promises about programming. So let's get into it. So the question in question was posted on one of the videos that I have made a little while back, where I was trying to answer the question, why is it that there are so many programming jobs? And I tried to explain that the reason why there's so many jobs open is because the demand is very high, but at the same time, the amount of people who are trying to become programmers, although there's a lot of competition in that space, everybody is very hyped up about programming and there's a lot of materials and courses and so forth. uh, the amount of people who actually work or actually become programmers is a lot less than the amount of people who want to become programmers, for pretty much this exact reason, that there is an idea that it's easy to become a programmer, or that it's a feasible strategy for someone to get a very quick career going and things like that. And that is simply not true, depending on how you look at it. And so what I wrote back to the subscriber, because the subscriber basically asked, Frederick, you stated what the problem is, but you didn't explain what the solution is. And I had to think about that for a moment, because from my perspective, that means that what you're asking me is, how do we solve the problem of people buying something that they think is something it may not be? How do we avoid people buying something that is not up to expectations, if that makes sense? And to me, that is like, it's basically an impossible problem to solve until humanity evolves to a point where we can share thoughts and experiences flawlessly. Because at that point, there's no way for us to miscommunicate or be dishonest or give half truths or anything like that. Because that's the thing, right? If someone says to you that you can get a six pack in a week, well, that's not really a lie if you're almost there. If someone tells you that you can learn JavaScript in 10 minutes, well, it's not a lie if all you want to do is to write hello world. So that's the convenient problem with expectations, and I would say language in general. There is no way for you to accurately say that this thing here that you're learning is not going to cut it in order for you to become a professional software developer. Because when you say professional software developer, how do you define that? Well, most of the people who are providing courses are showing you content that is absolutely relevant in many cases to being a professional software developer. The thing that is left out, which, as you probably understand, is left out because of one part of practical reasons, and of course a little bit of marketing as well, is the amount of effort it's going to take on your part in order to become a software developer. Now, you may have noticed that on this channel, I don't try to sugarcoat it. I'm trying to say to you that it's really hard to become a programmer. It's very worth it, and I think that if you're interested even remotely in it, you should give it a try. Trust me when I say that there was a few years there where I didn't think I was smart enough to do this, and then I tried it and it turns out that I actually was. So, and now I pretty much have my dream job. But it took a lot of effort. But at the same time, when someone comes and says, oh, it's complete bullshit that someone can learn programming in 3 months or take a boot camp and so forth, that's not true. This is the problem. This is why it's impossible to solve this problem. Because you can learn basic programming and be able to make basic things within 3 months. That is completely feasible. It's just that if if you have the idea that after that investment you are going to be part of that group of people which most of the industry is looking for, then you have false expectations. And I have been accused more than once of, well, on both sides, I would say. Some people have thanked me to that I demystify and that I expose these liars and frauds so that make YouTube videos or paid content and stuff like that. And the other part of people have said that I'm full of shit and that I don't know what I'm talking about, or that I'm scaring them because now they don't really feel that they want to try to get these boot camps and try to become software developers. And see, this is what makes it so hard for me to give you content that reflects the reality of something. And I will try my best again now to explain what's going on, and also touch on why I think that this is a problem that cannot be solved. You see, if your ambition is to become someone who gets paid to code, then you should know that there are many ways to get paid to write software. There are people who are working with very specific things within software development. An example would be WordPress developers or theme developers. Guys, there are people today who are actually getting paid for just doing CSS and HTML, like these basic building blocks of how you develop web applications. That doesn't mean that it's the same thing as if you were to try to get a job as a full stack developer at, I don't know, it doesn't have to be Google or Facebook, it can basically be any company, because the expectations are different. You can think of it's sort of the same. I suppose the best analogy I can give you is if you wanted to become a medical professional and your only requirement for becoming a medical professional is that you can help cure people, well, then there's quite a lot of roles that you could do within that space. You could be a pharmacist, you can be a nurse, you can be a doctor, you can be a like a surgeon or a brain surgeon. Like, there's so many things that you could be doing, and the only time you really shoot yourself in the foot here is if you don't understand what it is that you want to do within that space. Because as you can imagine, if you went online, now of course nobody's going to become a surgeon online, but let's pretend that you went online and you said, I want to help cure people, and then you have this mental picture that, well, I want to operate on people, or I want to patch up their wounds or things like that. And then someone says, hey, we have this course here where you will become a medical professional, but it's actually a course to become a pharmacist. Well, if you buy into that, well, then you're going on down a path which is not going to lead to you becoming a surgeon. And that's the thing that I dislike. This is the thing that I really dislike about these different boot camps and paid content and all that stuff that we have going on, because it's so easy for you to believe that you're going to invest a very minimum amount of time and then become this in-demand and superstar programmer. If it is possible for you to do so, because most of the content that you will go through is practically the stuff. I mean, it's not that they're lying to you. I mean, the content is good. I don't like, there are of course varying degrees of content, but if you are learning how to build a web server and you're learning how to do CSS and HTML and JavaScript, like, you are learning the things that all the professionals are doing. It's just that you're doing it at different levels, and these things are very obvious to someone who already knows all this stuff. It's like watching someone who does a little bit of jogging every now and then, and watching someone who is a paid or professional athlete. You can see that they're doing the same thing. It's just that they're doing it at very different levels. And that's why this can never be a lie. It can never be a lie, because you can always have the perspective that, well, you're going to be a programmer in 3 months, but most likely the only people who would ever that would even consider hiring you are actually very small time consultancies or very specific companies. They are not the people that you've been hearing about that have like this massive need for software development in general. Usually it is the bigger IT companies, the more established IT companies, who are looking for serious programmers with either a computer science degree or they're self-taught with several years of investment. That's what they're looking for. That's where the demand is. That doesn't mean that you can't get a job doing something that is not that. It's just that if you go out into the workforce and you get surprised that, oh, actually, the minimum requirement for all these jobs is 1 to 5 years. What's going on? What am I doing wrong? That's what I want to help you understand. That's why I think that there's no way for you to really fix this problem, because fundamentally you have to know yourself if that's what you want or if you want to learn some basic coding. So what I want you to take away from this is that if you want to avoid buying into false promises about programming, you have to understand that there's nobody they're not really lying to you. The lie is if there's a mismatch in expectations. If you believe that you will become a high in demand software developer with a very minimum amount of investment, like just a few months, you should know that that's not the norm. The norm is 1 to 5 years roughly in order to become the sort of developer that gets to be really in demand. With that said, the best, at least like my best tip that I can give you in order to make sure that you're not buying into false promises and that you actually set your expectations correctly, is to, number one, always know what it is that you are looking for, and make sure that the thing that you're buying or that the investment that you are making stands in proportion to what you are trying to achieve. You have to understand the road ahead. If you don't understand what it takes to get to where you want, then you don't actually know what you're buying into. The second part is never ever trust anybody who has something to gain from giving you a half the truth. Try to talk to people who are either real professionals, or just send a message to someone who has nothing to do with this but does actually do the thing that you want to do. Ask them some questions to get the reality of things. Because if you ask the store clerk if you look fat in the most expensive dress or pants they have, there might be an agenda to give you a half truth there. Just think about it. Have a great day.